Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Aki?
Alhamdulillah, kayfak?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
All right, folks, we're going to get ready and we're going to start the show, inshallah. I encourage everyone to like the program, to share, notify anyone you think will be interested in this topic about this live show. Share it afterwards. Also, subscribe. If you're going to subscribe, make sure you hit the bell so you're notified by YouTube. And if you want to go beyond that, because all that's free, it doesn't cost you anything to hit a like button or share or subscribe. If you want to go to the Patreon page and think about giving a donation, I can give you my assurances. Anything you donate will be recycled back into improving the show with software or equipment or anything else I may want to do in the future. With that said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Today's show is titled "The Black Conscious Community in Eurocentric Lies About Islam." And you may have saw the placate for the channel, which features on one side, the red, black, and green flag and the title of the show. And on the other side, you see an individual, a representation of a Egyptian pharaoh with white skin and light eyes, who I entitled Pharaoh Zaddy. The reason for that is that there does seem to be a contradiction among some, not all, because just like when I did my video yesterday about the so-called Black Hebrew Israelite movement, and you speak about these type of movements, there's so many subgroups and sub people. You can't talk about everyone with blanket statements, and you can't talk about anyone with blanket statements. So if it doesn't apply, let it fly. Don't get offended. But if it does apply, then maybe you need to think about it. There does seem to be, among Afrocentrists and people in the conscious community, this desire to explore Black and African history, to bring hidden and unknown things to light, and to overall boost the self-esteem of African people, whether they're on the continent of Africa or dispersed across the world, like in North America, South America, the Caribbean, in different places. And that's a noble cause. That's a great cause. Until it becomes pathological. And just like anything, Al-Islam teaches us, and we recite it 5 times a day and multiple times a day also outside of the prayers. When we recite the opening chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha, we ask the creator of the heavens and earth to guide us upon the straight path, the middle path. And that's true Islam. Islam is not what you see on the news or things like this about extremism. Extremism is anti-Islamic by definition. The middle path is al-Islam. So with anything, with that principle in mind, when I, as a Muslim, as I approach anything, I want to be in the middle of the extremes. So with the Afrocentric movement, we've had different personalities like Dr. Ben, different individuals. Sheikh Anta Diop is sometimes put into the category of Afrocentrist, but he never put himself into that category. And he was, a bona fide historian and researcher and scholar, but he never put himself into that category, even though Afrocentrists and people in the Black conscious community do take from some of his work. But on the other end, you had individuals who were completely against the Afrocentric movement. They wrote books against it, critiquing it. And I still, I found myself, reading material from Afrocentrists, looking at debates and different videos. But I also looked at the material of people who criticize and critique the movement as well, because I'm just that type of person who will listen to both sides of the story so I can stay in the middle. So one of the things there are a few things that didn't allow me, even in my personal search for the truth. I never jumped off the cliff onto that Black consciousness side. Didn't get an ankh around my neck and dress up like King Tut and nothing like that, because of a number of different reasons. One, I can remember back in the 80s when you had conscious rap music, late 80s, early 90s, and it became very popular to wear, the leather African medallions and kufis. Like I have a kufi. I'm wearing a kufi because, just to identify myself as a Muslim. And, African colors, so to speak, red and yellow and green and whatnot. And it was great to see people reconnect with their African history and African identity. But, looking back, one of the things that I see was incorrect about all that was, it was kind of put forward to us like Africa wasn't a continent, Africa was a country, and there was just one big culture called African culture, as if there weren't thousands of various ethnic groups and thousands of different tribes and people practicing different religions. Some people upon monotheism, some people upon polytheism, some people upon this and some people upon that, speaking various different languages. And these various different ethnic groups, even though they were all on the continent of Africa, they don't necessarily see themselves as the same people. There's certain tribes in East Africa, they don't see themselves being the same people as other people in West Africa, South America.
Up until this day.
Up until this day. That's why we don't, even though the Pan-African movement has been around since the time of slavery back into the 1800s, it still has not produced this united Africa. Mm-hmm. There is no African state. And my personal opinion, I'm not sure that there ever will be one United States, even though there are movements right now, regional movements to create cooperatives with, as far as economics in East Africa and in West Africa and different parts of Africa. I like those movements. And I think you could maybe have regional cooperations, and then those regional entities cooperate with each other. But a whole entire united Africa with a whole entire united, South and North America and Caribbean, and white folks don't even unite that much. I'm not sure you're going to be but if it was to happen, it would be a wonderful thing. But that's one thing, that a kind of a distorted image of Africa that didn't line up with reality. Also, back in the 80s and 90s, there seemed to be a respect for Islam, because of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali and Elijah Muhammad and different people in the Black community. But there seemed to be a change in the late 90s and the 2000s. Seemed to be a change where you had individuals attacking Islam and attacking Muslims and making Islam to be some type of foreign virus or pathogen inside Africa. And it wasn't,
the first person actually to start doing that was Malachi Z. York.
Enlighten us, brother.
So your timing is actually, spot on. Even though in the 90s and early 2000s it was really weak, and he himself was pushing himself as this Islamic personality.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, because wasn't his group quasi-Islamic at first?
Oh yeah, yeah, and they were incredibly influential in the black community. So much so that even rappers were giving them shout outs in their songs. And I don't know if you know this song called Peach Fuzz from the
Yep, I
80s.
remember
Yeah,
that.
right. In their video, they're dressed up exactly like the Ansar Allah, which was his community,
Okay.
right? And as well as all kinds of different groups would give them shout outs. You know, everybody in the black community kind of like respected them because they were wearing the white thobes and they're going out in the community and bringing the truth and and calling the people to Islam, and they looked like really holy, righteous people. Their whole you know, outfit and whatnot, and the amount of knowledge that they had in terms of Islam and whatnot. You know, of course, you know, if you're ignorant, then the one-eyed man is king of the land of the blind, as so to speak. So, but so like they were quite popular in the black community, particularly in the East Coast.
Even Jay-Z was a part of that group, allegedly.
Yeah, you know who else comes directly from that group?
Who's that?
Mark Lamont Hill.
Yeah, I knew about that.
Right, he's directly from that group. Who's the King Kong Consciousness? What's his name again? Omar Johnson. Him too.
Omar Johnson, yeah.
Him too, right?
he called consciousness. Yeah. Well, that's what he calls himself, right?
Yeah, King Kong Consciousness, right? But there's a lot of people that actually came directly from that group. And what happened was he changed the doctrine, right? He changed the doctrine in the 90s. And then when he changed the doctrine, it became a pagan religion. And ironically, when he changed the doctrine, he started saying that black people were the original Indians. I kid you not. They started saying that. First, they became cowboys. No. First, the first change, they were aliens. Okay, they were aliens first. Okay,
hey, hold up, Ak. I just want to read this. This brother objective incision says, LOL. On Friday, Malachi would do a Jumu'ah khutbah calling himself Imam Isa. Then later that Friday night, he'll be a nightclub. He'll be a nightclub DJ called Dr. York.
Yeah, that's a fact. That actually happened.
Yeah,
that actually happened. You know, because he was a musician.
Yeah,
and he made a lot of claims. You know what I mean? So, but however, how are people like this able to get on in the black community? Is because the black community in general is quite ignorant. We're coming out of slavery. From slavery, mind you, you know, it was illegal for black folks to read in the time of Reconstruction. None of us could read, right? In that 12-year period, we went from negligible to 0%. Whatchamacallit, ability to read. Okay, what's the word I'm looking for? I should have taken some caffeine. What do you call it?
Illiterate?
Yeah, literacy. They went from 0 to almost 60% literacy in the black community in the time span of 12 years. And of course, you know, white people were losing their minds. And that's around the same time where the KKK, that's what spearheaded the KKK, actually. It was the time frame of Reconstruction. Because you got to remember, black people had the numbers. They were the majority, particularly in the South, you know, and they were voting in legally all their political representatives into power in this time, right? So it was violently usurped. And that's what caused the downfall of black progression from that time. And the reaction to slavery was Jim Crow. You understand? So now you have Jim Crow. Black people are living in terrorism for the better part of 100 years. And then the civil rights movement starts. Okay. Dr. York, he himself spearheaded pretty much the majority of your Hotep hustler movements today. Every last one of them traces back to him. Every one of them. Whether you talk about the Aboriginal movement, whether you talk about the Hotep movement, whether you talk about what's that church? I think it's called Cubic Church in Britain. So many of them.
Okay.
They have a direct chain and link to him, right? He was the first one to say that we were not Africans, we were American Indians. Don't you know that y'all are indigenous, not African? And I put it on my YouTube. You know what I mean?
See, that's one of the gripes I have about the some aspects of the conscious community. Number one is it seems elements of it seem very faddish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they go through these different stages. 1 minute, you know, black people are Kemites, and everybody wants to wear. Everybody wants to be. Everybody wants to be. And I know York did that too. Everybody wants to talk about Kemet and the 48 laws of Ma'at and all this other stuff. And then the next thing, we're Indians. And then the next thing, you know, you're talking about Western African Muslim community empires. And then the next thing, we're aliens. And then the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing.
Yeah.
It's very unstable.
Yeah. So he's probably I would consider the most prolific cultist in Black history and probably in history in general, right? The single most prolific one. And ironically, it's so ironic because all these cults come from him and nobody knows who he is. This is weird. It's like it's like the weirdest thing. Like, how do you not know where you're getting this information from?
Well, that's the power of the fact that he was on the East Coast. You know, and he was his operational base was in New York and New Jersey, which is, you know, a lot of things come out of New York. A lot of trends come out of New York and influence the rest of the nation and the whole world at that. And plus hip hop, that he had that connection with the hip hop community in New York, and they were able to disseminate some of his ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
So. Yeah, and his whole hustle was like he was on that Muslim, like the Ansar Allah stuff. He was the Mahdi. He's Imam Isa, Al Hadi, Al Mahdi, right? He's the guide. He's Al Hadi. He's the Mahdi. He's the Masih. He's all of it, right? Right? You know what I mean? You know. Meanwhile, you know, his whole hustle was just to get money and women and even little boys, and it all came out. He's in jail now for child molestation. Right, he molested hundreds and hundreds of people, hundreds, including boys. So many. He spread herpes to hundreds of people, like legit hundreds, including children. Right?
That's the plot of the white. Do you believe that? That's the plot of the white man.
And then you have people defending him. You're like,
there's still some people. I know he still has followers. He still has supporters.
You know what I mean? It's just the weirdest thing. And all it takes is a little bit of investigation. But what happens is, because Black people are not taught how to investigate in academia and whatnot, as the Bible says, you know, my people are lost due to lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to trick an ignorant people to have an emotional attachment to personalities, as opposed to actually looking at actual evidence and proof. And what has become evidence and proof nowadays in 2022? Memes are proof now. Doctored Photoshop pictures are proof. You know what I mean? All kinds of ridiculous stuff is proof, and nobody takes the time to actually go and do the actual work and study these sciences to find out if they're true or not. So the majority of these cults, they have like a similar, I want to say a similar model or playbook that they use for Black people. They will refer to Black people as God, or the chosen ones, or God's chosen, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, the and and they will say that we are the original man, the original people of the earth, and these type of things, right?
hmm
And if you're a black person and you never heard that, you grew up your entire life in, you know, in squalor, then yeah, it's easy to get to gravitate to that.
yeah. And especially, I mean, it's you can see the appeal when you're under the shoe of white supremacy.
Mm,
When you live in a culture that that is extremely Eurocentric,
mm,
to the point, you're being taught in school. Like I remember I've been taught in school, Europeans invented math.
yeah,
Um, you know, Europeans invented spelling. Europeans, and even when they would acknowledge some other part of the world doing something,
mm,
then they would whitewash those people.
of course,
So like the picture on the cover of this particular this video, you got pharaohs with blue eyes and white skin. You got
yeah,
people in the
just
middle
like
of
the
Mesopotamia
same.
with white, with blonde hair.
Hmm.
So they co-opt. They would make it as seem as they're the only ones who did anything significant in human history. And if anyone else did something else and they had to admit it, they would co-opt those people anyway. So yes, in a lot of ways, these movements that have sprung up among black people were reactionary. It was a
Yes,
reaction to white supremacy.
hmm, yes, exactly. You know, so um, in modern times, it has reached an incredibly embarrassing and pathetic level, particularly amongst black people, because everybody got to hustle, right? And there are so many of them now. You know what I mean? And they're all like legit hustling people based
Yeah,
upon personality. You have people like Brother Polite. You have
yeah,
people like Young Pharaoh. You have people like Tariq Nasheed.
mm,
You know, they're all pretty much starting this like these types of pseudo. They don't even have to be like authentic or anything like that. All they have to have is a pitch, and people will go for it.
it seemed like there was a generation where you had like Henrik Clark,
Yeah,
Ivan Sternemeyer, and these
I've
actual
been-
people who had credentials,
yeah,
actual real education. And then
mm,
they came out in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s.
mm,
And then once they started retiring or dying off, then you had all these characters who came out, especially with the advent of social media.
mm.
So
It's
you had
funny.
all these.
It's funny you mentioned Ivan Van Sertima. I have a funny story about him.
Okay.
Right. So Ivan Van Sertima, he wrote this book. I can't remember the name. It's a popular book though. But it was quite popular back in the day or whatnot. And then Dr. York, he switched from whatever he was to he was indigenous now. Now he's indigenous Indian. Okay, so he switched from that to indigenous Indian, and there were these call-in forums, right? Because back in those days there was no internet, right? So it was like a type of like you leave a voice message on a forum, right? And then everybody can listen to it and leave like a 1 minute message here and there, right? So I was on one of these call-in forums, right? It was a black forum, and then this girl on this forum, she starts repeating what Dr. York is saying, that actually not only were black people here before the native Indians, but we are the original native Indians. And who did she cite? Like all these guys, they all cite Ivan Van Sertima.
Hmm.
Right? They all go back to Ivan Van Sertima because Ivan Van Sertima said that the indigenous peoples in North and South America are all originally black people. Right? That's what they're saying. Right? So me and this other person, what did we do? We called Ivan Van Sertima.
Okay.
Right? And Ivan Van Sertima, the brother left a message on his phone on his whatchamacallit, his it's like a answering machine, right? And Afrocentrism called back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did he say in his accent? He goes, "Don't listen to this is Ivan Van Sertima." I remember even the accent. I remember
Yeah,
everything.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
This is Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Don't listen to these stupid people. They don't know what they're talking about. I never said such a stupid thing. He's talking about Dr. York. He's talking about these people saying that, that we are the original indigenous people. Blah. That's not what Ivan Van Sertima said. He's saying that, they came before Columbus. That's the name of his work. He's basically saying that we were here before Europeans, right? And we had settled. There you go. There you go. Okay? That's what he's saying, and he's bringing the whatchamacallit, the archaeological and anthropological evidence to show that we were here even hundreds of years before any European landed in the West, right?
And funny, and just to throw something out there for the people, the Africans who are, because there's a oral tradition in West Africa about this, and that those Africans who came over, who are said to have come over, were from a Black Islamic kingdom in West Africa. But some of these people, they like to grab a hold of that information, but they don't want to mention the Islamic portion of that, and they want to make this argument that Islam is a foreign thing, foreign entity that invaded quote unquote sub-Saharan Africa, which I'll get into later.
So all these guys who are quoting Dr. Ivan Sertima saying that that Black people are the original Aboriginals and
I read the book, Aki. It doesn't say that anywhere. He never says that. He doesn't even allude to that fact at all. But see, this is the point. You had in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even to a certain point in the 90s, you had actual real scholars who were writing books and giving lectures and whatnot. And then this new crop of social media grifters have come along, and they take quotes from these people, and then they kind of spin their own interpretation out of their quotes and out of their books and out of their work to say things that these people never said.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's a hustle, man. And people go for it. Like I'm even some of these guys, I'm shocked. Like I wouldn't even have a regular conversation with some of the people that people listen to, man. Why are you sending me a video of Brother Pillay? Are you kidding me? Why? I don't want to hear anything from Brother Pillay.
Oh, let me tell you something about Brother Pillay. I actually saw a video where he made this argument. He was arguing against a Muslim. And his argument was, he asked the Muslim, Ar-Rahman comes from Rahma, correct? And the Muslim said yes. And what's the meaning of Rahma? What's what is it derived from? And they start talking about, the etymology and whatnot. And he says, it relates to the woman's womb. Rahma relates to the woman's womb. So he used that to say Allah is really secretly is the black woman.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, because he worships the black woman. So
they do all the stupid stuff. That's incredibly stupid. Incredibly stupid. Yes. You know what I mean? Just find the Arabs that believe that anywhere in the world, right? So you just make some stuff up, and then because you know how to string together a couple of words in English and make it sound good with inflection in your voice, we're supposed to believe it. Where's your proof?
Well, his proof is going to be look up the word rahma in the dictionary. See,
exactly. That's they always say some craziness like that all the time. When you ask them for the proof, they put the onus of proof on you. They deflect it. Yeah. You understand? When you ask them, well, who said this before you? Like, just name one person in the history of history that said this before you. So you get something from your imagination, but the proof is in the dictionary. You know what I'm saying? But they do this all the time. They do this type of word gymnastics, and people go for it. People go for it, like,
Yes.
and really, at the end of the day, when you go for stuff like that because you were too lazy to actually go and do the research yourself, then whose fault is it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead of reading a book, you read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Facebook
But
posts.
even books can be dangerous because William Chancellor's book, what is it, The Destruction of Black Civilization, that came out in the 70s. He made the claim in that book that Islam entered into Africa because the Arabs came and invaded and destroyed Ghana, the Ghana Empire, and took it over and forced Africans into Islam. Now,
well, he would even have to cite his proof for that anyways if he wrote it in a book.
But his proof, the problem is his proof comes from Eurocentric historians,
Orientalists,
who themselves didn't have proof of this. So
exactly.
This was a European theory. That's a European theory.
This goes to again, it goes back to a problem with Black people in general. How to research. Where do you get your data from? We all know what Orientalism was about. Is essentially the whole point of Orientalism was to discredit Islam under the guise of we're just studying the Orient. Right? But the whole goal and purpose of Orientalism was to discredit Islam.
Yeah, these were scholars for dollars.
That was their job. Their job was to discredit Islam. But if you don't know even how to do research, and then you are beholden to anybody that comes and gives you any type of information.
Yes.
You understand? That's the point. You understand?
Or if you can't even ask follow-up questions.
Yes.
If somebody just comes in some kente cloth and tells you something, you just believe what they have to say because you're naivete. You're naive. You think somebody has an ankh and kente cloth that it's not possible they can have an agenda, or it's not possible they could be a hustler. It's not possible that they're pushing something on you.
Yep, 100%. And black people, they have this disease that if they have a personality that they like. And I can't actually say Black people only. Like, I think it's a general thing with human beings.
Well, yeah, that's a general thing with humans too.
Yeah, if there's a personality that they like, and they say something questionable, or even outright just blatantly wrong, they will turn into yes men simply because they like that personality.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like this individual. Whatchamacallit? The guy, what's his name? I'm forgetting a lot of stuff. I should have took some caffeine then. What's the I'm just here to make you think. I'm just here to make you think.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. I can see his face right now.
That bozo. Oh my God. That guy.
What's this dude? Hold on, I gotta find that guy's name.
I can't believe people listen to this guy. Dan Calloway.
That's Dan Calloway. Dan Calloway.
I'm just here to make you think. Muslims sent me his stuff.
I believe it.
You know what I mean? Muslims. And I didn't know who he was, right? So I go and I watch his stuff. I remember the first time I got one of his videos from a brother, and I said, I watched it because I know who he is or anything like that. I didn't even know he was a thing. I watched the video. I said, and the brother asked me what I think, and I said, this is probably one of the dumbest things I ever seen. I didn't know anything about the guy. I go, he's talking a bunch of nonsense, right? I go, people listen to this guy. He goes, yeah, well, just keep an open mind. That's what the brother's telling me, to keep an open mind. I said, okay. He sends me another video. And I'm like, this thing is just as dumb as the last video you sent me. But I don't know anything about him. I didn't know that there was an entire community of Muslims in the East Coast that are following this guy.
Notice the East Coast.
The East Coast, yeah. Again,
a lot of
always
this
from the
stuff
East Coast.
comes out of the East Coast.
Oh yeah, always from the East Coast. Always from the East Coast. I didn't know that. I didn't know there's a whole bunch of Muslims, you know, in Philly and Jersey and New York that are following Dane Calloway. I'm like, what? Like I even know when I'm saying
Even
it out of my
brothers, even brothers that are supposed to be on the Sunnah, that on Salafiyah,
yeah,
have been duped up into this stuff.
Dane Calloway stuff. I'm like, what? And they're running around. Muslims are saying, we're not black, we are indigenous and blah blah. We're the copper colored people. I'm like, where are you getting this stuff from? Right? Where are you getting this stuff from? And one brother, he goes to me, he goes, you know, just name one person who said that we were black before Europeans. And I said, the Prophet Muhammad said so.
Yes.
He's getting angry at me for quoting a very obvious and easy thing that anybody can look up. You know, did not the Messenger of Allah say there's no superiority of the white over the black and the black over the white? Didn't he say this? Didn't he when that incident happened between Abu Dhar and Bilal? Didn't he say, Abu Dhar, do you whatchamacallit? Do you talk about him because he's black? Yeah, Abu Dhar. Then he's saying this all the time. It's like something that's well known, right? No. These guys are coming with some because we weren't called black until white people and Europeans came over to, because remember, we're not Africans, right? We're actually, according to these guys, we're like the original aboriginals, North American, and slavery didn't happen. That's what Dane Calloway says. Slavery didn't happen. And people listen to this. Slavery didn't happen. Okay, it didn't happen. Okay. We are the actual aboriginals. We're not black, right? We're not. Dane Calloway says, I'm making this up, right? And you can talk to any one of them. They'll tell you the same thing. Anybody that follows this stuff. He said, well, okay, I'm not making this up. He said that the real map or the globe of the world, right? Mm-hmm. The Europeans, intentionally gave you the wrong map because it's supposed to be upside down, and South America is 10 times bigger than Africa and 100 times bigger than Europe. So basically, North America and South America, that's when it's like this, it's supposed to be like this, right? And the Europeans are coming across like this. like it's not even making any sense. Like, he's saying this stuff, and people just go for it. They believe all this stuff. They believe this stuff. You know what I'm saying? But why? How can black people easily accept this thing? Because they don't read. They don't read. And there comes a point, a time, where you can't look at white supremacists anymore and say, well, this is from white. No, like, how much responsibility do you take for the things that you believe? And on top of that, you get so zealous over these new things that you just found out that if somebody disagrees with you, you have to cut them off. And that's what happens.
Give me a second, Ak. I want to just read a couple of quotes. All right, so these quotes are from an article that actually quote an African how do you say that? Anthropologist and Egyptologist, and a real Egyptologist, Sheikh Anta Diop. He has the African Origin of Civilization is one of his prominent books. He says the primary reason for the success of Islam in Black Africa, with one exception, consequently stems from the fact that it was propagated peacefully at first by solitary Arab Berber travelers to certain Black kings and notables, who then spread it about them to those under their jurisdiction. What is to be emphasized here is the peaceful nature of this conversion, regardless of the legend surrounding it. So when he says the legend surrounding it, he's talking about the type that this thing that the Eurocentric historians invented, which was then picked up by people like William Chancellor and others in the some people in the Black conscious community of this mass invasion of Arabs and Berbers who came down into quote unquote so-called sub-Saharan Africa, which is an imaginary demarcation. That they came down and they forced Islam on Black people, and they forced the Arabic language and the Quran on Black people, and that's how like these various Islamic kingdoms came about in West Africa, of course, and then also East Africa as well. But that's an absolute legend. It never happened. Chick Antediop, there's another quote I was looking for. I haven't found it yet. But he says no such thing ever took place. There was after Chancellor Williams' book came out in the late 70s, early 80s, a group of German scholars, they went to West Africa. They wanted to find artifacts and proof, oral history for this so-called Arab invasion of sub-Saharan Africa. And they wrote a paper and turned that paper into a book later on, saying that they could find no evidence of any such thing having taken place. It's not in the oral tradition of any of the cultures in West Africa. There is no archaeological evidence of it. It didn't happen.
Yeah,
that's not how Islam came into quote unquote Black Africa. Black Africans accepted Islam, Sunni Islam. Sunni Ali. It's one of the first African kings, emperors who accepted Islam, and then it disseminated from him to other people in his family and in his court and in the government. And once the government accepted it, of course, the regular people began to accept it. But even with that, with these great kingdoms like the Ghanaian African kingdom, all these other kingdoms, there were still Africans in the jurisdiction of these kingdoms who were not Muslim, and they were never forced to accept Islam for hundreds of years. They just lived under the Sultan. So all the whole entire narrative is wrong, and it's based in quote unquote, I know you hate this word, quote unquote Islamophobia. We got to come up with a different word, but it's based in that. So so it's very unfortunate that people, in the name of lifting Black people up and giving a light to African history, you wanted to attack your own people's history, because the majority of us people in North, South, and in the Caribbean, we come from North. Our ancestry and our DNA comes from West Africa. Either we had ancestors that were Muslim, or if they weren't Muslim, they lived under a sultan, most likely. And you're going to tear down a part of your history in the name of lifting up a part of the history. And you want to put this emphasis. You're saying African history, but you're putting an emphasis on Kemet, Egypt, as if all of African history and all of African culture is summed up in Kemet. When it's not. That's just not. That's what I talk about, the distortion. There's a lot of distortion in that movement.
And it's easy to do that if you have a people who don't take reading seriously, and all their information is basically coming from personalities. So if you look at even the history of slavery, the largest slave revolt was a Muslim revolt in Brazil that happened in South America.
Yes,
and it was the first one as well.
I have a copy of that a documentary about that on my page in my videos.
The largest revolt in North America was with Muslims again. It was the Gullah revolt, and those people are still alive today, practicing a form of Islam. It's not pure Islam, but they call themselves Muslims. They call they're Gullahs. They call themselves Gullahs, right? And they're in Florida, and they exist up until this very day. Anybody can look it up.
Let me drop another fact on you. Even the Gullahs that were Christian,
Yeah.
They became Baptists, but the form of Christianity that they had in
Mm.
their churches, they separated the men and the women,
Yeah.
and they would build their churches facing the east.
Hmm. So it's just people are taking advantage of black people all over the place, and sometimes you know white supremacy will come in the form of a black face, and
Mm,
unless you are humble enough to accept mistakes that you made, then how are you ever going to be guided to the truth? Like it's just you have to be humble enough to know when you made a mistake. You can't just double down on your mistakes.
true.
You understand? Like if you what you call it, come to the realization that there's something wrong here, then leave at the bare minimum, leave the thing that is wrong and then try to find the truth. Don't double down on the thing that is wrong.
Well, Aki, I think it's even more serious than that because this is just my opinion, but I can't prove it. But because of the existence of things like COINTELPRO Pro and the history of certain law enforcement entities getting involved in black movements and black organizations to distort them and to cause infighting among black people when they try to get liberty. I honestly, in my personal opinion, believe that you could have agent provocateurs who
Yep.
came into the black consciousness community to stir up anti Islamic sentiments and anti-Muslim sentiments. Because, if you're going to unite all African people and you have millions of Africans who are Muslim, you have the, the biggest group of people who have converted to Al-Islam in the Western world being black people.
Well,
You
I'll give
know,
you one more.
hi,
I'll give you one more. Where you're talking about COINTELPRO, the FBI explicitly said that the Black Muslim movement is the most dangerous movement in America. And the CIA explicitly says, even on their website, they talk about fighting extremism and Islamic extremism. What they really mean is to fight Islam. You understand? That's what they really mean, and that's how they speak. They speak like this in order to have a semblance of plausible deniability. You understand? Because they understand the threat from Islam is not that it has nothing to do with terrorism. It has everything to do with an ideology of justice. You understand?
yes.
When the Black Muslim movement was gaining a popularity because of Malcolm X, right? They were afraid of the Black Muslim movement because Malcolm X did not take violence off the table.
True.
And that is Islam, right?
Yes.
That is Islam,
Yes. I
right?
mean,
We
you don't have to
believe
be a
that.
rocket scientist to see this. That you see that first of all, the way that the way that America has painted Martin Luther King is distorted. It's not completely accurate. But they've taken a snippet of one speech that he made. This man had a movement for years. He did probably hundreds of speeches, but they take one speech and they don't even take the whole entire speech. They take a couple of snippets out of that speech to promote this, this almost Black Gandhi image of this, complete nonviolence, and that the only legitimate, ideology that came out of the '60s, out of civil rights and Black Power, is non-Christian, the Christian nonviolent portion of that movement. That's the only one that's legitimate.
And up
And
until
the
that
other
day,
stuff, that other stuff, that's evil. That's bad.
and up until this very day, that gets taught in schools. That right there gets taught in schools. And on top of that, they actually bastardize the the complete message of Martin Luther King, because in the beginning, yes, he was about nonviolence, 100%, right? But why was he assassinated? That's the $1,000,000 question, right?
Yeah.
Why was Martin Luther King assassinated? According to your history, right? Martin Luther King, he succeeded in the civil rights movement. He did it peacefully. You understand? He got black folks civil rights and he won, according to your history. But what was it about Martin Luther King that warranted an assassination? Right?
Yeah.
It was during that, after the civil rights movement, there were a couple of reports that came out. One of them was called the Kerner Commission.
Okay.
The Kerner Commission and the what were you going to say?
Moynihan.
Yeah, the Moynihan report.
Yeah.
Right. So you had two reports came out. One is the Kerner Commission, and the other one was the Moynihan report. Okay. So the Kerner Commission basically said that America is moving into two separate and unequal countries, one black, one white, right? And that the only way to fix the wealth gap between black and white is to tax the American people to fix the wrongs that have been inflicted on black folk from slavery and Jim Crow and all this kind of stuff, all this wickedness that these devils did.
Redlining.
And they continue to do up until this day.
Up to this day.
Let's just call it what they continue to do it. The Moynihan report was a report about the black family. And this report was saying that there is a coming crisis of black single mothers. And the reason why this is happening is because the government has come in as a stepfather to black children. And they are basically telling black women that we will give you welfare if you kick your man out the house. And this is causing black women now to choose welfare over having a man. And at that time, 25%, it was the Moynihan report came out in 1968, I believe. 25% of black homes were single parent homes. Now it's 72. He called it an epidemic in 68. Okay.
Yeah.
He called it an epidemic.
And you can even look at it.
Call it today. But anyways, back to Martin Luther King, right? Martin Luther King met with Malcolm X before he died, right? Rahimahullah. Then after Malcolm X died, he met with Elijah Muhammad. Okay. And then after the civil rights movement, his tone was changing. Why? Because Richard Nixon, the money that was used after these two reports came out, the money that was used, that was supposed to be used to build the black community, he sent it where? Where did he send it?
Vietnam.
Yep. So his tone completely changed. And in the later years of his life, Martin Luther King sounded like Malcolm X. And you can hear, anybody can go on YouTube and listen to Martin Luther King's later speeches, how he was disheartened by the civil rights movement, completely disheartened by it, and how he made a speech to his constituents right before he died. Right, he's talking about how America, and this is actually the speech that got him assassinated. He's talking about how America, through the Homestead Act, gave millions of acres of land to white people for free. And not only that, they gave them the farm equipment free to develop that land. And not only that, they helped them with labor to develop all this for free in the Homestead Act. And And then they have the nerve. He said this, and they have the nerve to tell black people to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and give them nothing. That's what Martin Luther King said. Did that sound like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X?
You're right. They were coming together. Their minds and their movements were converging.
Exactly.
Converging. Exactly. The civil rights and black power were converging on each other.
Exactly. Right. So now he's starting to sound like Malcolm X. And then he said, we are going to Washington. And what did he say? We're going to Washington to get our check.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Okay. He blasted the war in Vietnam, which was not popular at that time to blast that war. But he blasted it. And that put him in hot water with other preachers in the civil rights movement. You understand?
Oh, yeah.
That's why they assassinated him. Not because of his peace talk, but he was changing his tone. And what influenced him to change that tone? It was his conversations with who? The Muslims. And that's why your government don't like Muslims. And the government has a new strategy now for the Muslims. Instead of trying to dismantle them and trying to destroy their movements because it's too tiring. They keep coming back and keep coming back. This is what we're going to do. We're going to convince the Muslims now to be peaceful, to be non-violent, right? To be, what should we call it? Just to be, can we all just get along? And that's why I don't like that term Islamophobia. That's
beta. They want Muslims to be beta.
Beta, right? And they have a playbook for that because they did this in India.
Mm-hmm.
This was done in India. The same thing they're trying to do in the West is already done. It's finished now. Khalas, Janaza is completed in India and Pakistan and these types of places, right? The subcontinent of India. Finished. They have a playbook for it. They have a history for it. What was happening in India when the British went there? Okay? When the British arrived in India trying to colonize these people, the Hindus were as docile as the cows that they worship. Submissive. Just submissive. But it was the Muslims that were giving them that work, right?
Yeah, the Muslims were turning up.
Yeah, the Debunking movement, it was actually a reaction to British.
And you notice that every time white supremacy has come in contact with Islam, the Muslims have turned up. Yeah.
Every single time.
When they tried to come into Africa, Muslims turned up. When they tried to, even you go back to the Crusades, the Muslims turned up. Even with the slave trade.
The whole point of Christopher Columbus trying to discover India, trying to find a new route of India, is because he was trying to avoid the Muslims.
Yeah, trying to avoid the Muslims.
He was trying to avoid the Muslims. So they have this in their psyche about Islam and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So now,
but see, they try to psychologically turn that around on us to make it seem like we're bad.
Yes.
You're doing something wrong. You're bad. You have bad character. You Muslims have a bad religion and you have bad character because you resist our white supremacy.
Yeah.
You resist our white supremacy and you don't want to recognize us as the supreme human beings on the earth. So you're violent. You're a terrorist.
So we gave them work in Brazil. We gave them work in Florida. We gave them work. It was the Muslim slaves that were revolting, and that's why they worked so very hard.
In fact,
in forced conversions.
And when the Muslim, when they started bringing slaves to the island of Espanol, and they were bringing people from Africa. They were also bringing people from Al-Andalus as well.
Yeah.
To that island and to Puerto Rico also. When they had a slave revolt, which was stirred up by Muslims, they actually they did a Muslim ban. That was the first Muslim ban in the West.
Yeah.
They for almost like 15 years, they did not want any Muslims or any Muslim tribes to come over with the other slaves that they were importing. So eventually they got rid of the ban, but they recognized in the late 1500s that the Muslims were a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, in India now, British are trying to colonize India, right? They're getting that holy work from the Muslims, even though again they have Akida problems. No doubt they have Akida problems. The Deobandi movement was started as an answer to colonialism. That's why that whole movement, and that's why those people are so attached to the Deobandis like that. You understand? Even you can say Jamaat Tabligh, right? You can make an argument that Jamaat Tabligh, why was it started? Because the Muslims, they're starting to find their identity because of British colonialism, right? So they want to call the Muslims to the mosque and call them to the mission, these type of things, right? What did the British government do? They said, we got to pacify these people, man. This is too much. We can this work everywhere we go. We meet these people, right? Even in India, right? And mind you, Indians have a reputation of being incredibly passive, including the Muslims, and they were still going to have that militant propensity in the subcontinent, right? So, anyways, what did they do? They tried to infiltrate the Muslims. How did they do it? They started a group which is known as the Ahmadi sect, right? They basically recruited this man, Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, to call the Muslims to a form of Islam that was friendly to the British government. You understand? That's how the Ahmadiyya sect started. That's the whole point of the Ahmadiyya Qadiani sect, was to get and convince these Muslims that it's okay to be with your British colonizers. Not only that, but the Aga Khanis, they themselves were recruited. They had already existed, but they recruited the Aga Khanis in order to be sympathetic to British colonialism. You understand?
One of the most prominent anti-Muslim Christian apologists came out of the Qadianis, and that was Nabil Qureshi.
There you go.
Who was the best friend of David Wood until he died from cancer.
Yes. So now, if you look through what happened with the Turks and whatnot, who were the people that the British were getting to fight the Turks? It was Indian Muslims. They're getting Indian Muslims to go fight the Turks. And yet the same people are always talking about Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab. And your people were fighting against the Turks, the Ottomans. Your people helped bring down the Ottoman Empire. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is you talking about?
Stuff inconvenient parts of history.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the narrative, Not only that, but now you have these years of the colonizers being there. They're infiltrating, they're in the masajid or whatever, they're paying off imams and whatnot. And so a lot of these imams, they start becoming sympathetic. And then you start hearing from the Indian populace that you have to get a Western education. What's the Western education?
That English style colonial colonizer, classical Greek education.
Exactly. So now this happens for decades and decades and decades. And in 2022,
still going on.
2022, bro, those same docile, submissive Hindus,
now they turning up.
Now they become militant, and those former militant Muslims,
they become docile.
So
now the West has the Hindus doing their dirty work for them.
Thank you.
And you can keep your hands clean, because it's not us. We're not the one. We didn't do it. We didn't do it. I didn't say you can't wear hijab. I didn't say that.
And it's happening here in the West. You know, before 9/11, Islam meant submission to the will of Allah. After 9/11, what did Islam
Peace.
mean?
Peace.
Thank you.
Peace.
You think it's an accident?
What
You
kind of
think these
peace,
people
though?
don't know what
Okay,
they know
okay.
they're
What
doing?
type of peace? Peace with who? Peace how? Because
Yeah.
that's a generic statement. Peace.
Mhm.
What is a peace? What does that mean? Peace. That's a very generic type of statement.
Exactly. And you have
I'm
Muslims
surprised
all
that.
over the world, all over the West, trying to convince non-Muslims that Islam is a peaceful religion. They're trying to convince, and they're begging the non-Muslim to believe that Islam is a peaceful religion.
Just like in it carrying into the 70s, 80s, 90s, up until today, the public schools and the whole entire school system and curriculums have been all geared to paint the Christian nonviolent aspect of the civil rights era as the legitimate black struggle, as opposed to those other people, those violent, nasty black power people,
exactly,
who a lot of them were Muslim, not just Malcolm X. A lot of people in the in the various different movements, they were Muslim. They started converting to Al-Islam. Even when COINTELPRO came in and caused a lot of division, COINTELPRO was more than just spies and whatnot. No, if you look at what people wrote about that, no, the federal government declared war on the Black Power movement. They were taking people out. They were assassinating people and arresting people on trumped up charges and giving them life in prison, or trying to imprison them as long as possible. And that caused an underground movement called the BLA, Black Liberation Army. And you notice they never talk about the Black Liberation Army. I never learned about that in middle school or high school. But the Black Liberation Army was full of Muslims. Full of Muslims. But they, again, the school systems, the curriculum, the media, the movies, even fake scholars for dollars in academia. That's another thing that I have a problem with. A lot of people have been taught to think that academia is neutral, and it's not. Nothing is. First of all, nothing is neutral. Not everybody has presuppositions. You'll learn if you study philosophy. You'll understand that every time you form a thought, every time you make a sentence, is based on a presupposition. That's just a fancy way of saying a presumption. It's faith based. You presume something to be true. So even in academia has presuppositions, and there's nothing neutral. And so when it comes to all these things, there's an agenda. There's an agenda to promote the West, to promote Western liberalism, and all of that is just masked to promote white supremacy. At the end of the day, that's what's being promoted. You clear away the top layer. What's beneath that is white supremacy.
And there's no doubt about it, anyways, because if you look at the playbook, what has really changed from the civil rights movement with the Democratic parties or the left-leaning parties and the black community? Except they every 4 years they're begging the black people to vote for them, or else the sky's gonna fall, the world's gonna end, and you're gonna have a Klansman, in office, and black people get a whole bunch of nothing. You understand?
But so, even white supremacy is a delusion.
White supremacy is based upon lies, and like that. There's nothing they won't do.
White supremacy is a reaction to the so-called Muslim Golden Age.
Yeah, like you see this book here. I don't know if you see it.
Yes.
Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Yes. This outlines. If you read and understand this book, right, you're basically going to understand why the white supremacist thinks and does and acts the way that they do. You understand?
Power.
Yeah.
Power.
The whole concept of the ends justifies the means.
Comes
Machiavelli, you know,
but,
the whole concept of it's better to be a leader that is feared than loved.
Yes.
Machiavelli.
Yes. But the point, the point I was just making, they tried to make it seem as if, this clash of civilizations jive, but they don't. Again, what they don't teach in their curriculum in your schools is that Islam was in Europe.
Yeah.
During that so-called Dark Ages, Islam was in Europe. There were Islamic sultanates in France, in modern day France, in modern day Switzerland,
in Spain.
Even the Vikings came. The Muslims gave dawah to some of the Vikings.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah. In Spain, of course, for over almost 900 years, Muslims were there. They try to make that seem like an alien force that the Catholics came down and purged from Spain. But after 900 years, that's not alien. And they won't tell you that when the Muslims came, the people didn't even put up a fight. They were welcomed as champions and liberators because the people didn't want to live under the Visigoths.
Yes.
They don't tell you all that. They don't tell you that Islam was in Europe for hundreds of years. They don't tell you Europeans converted to Al-Islam. They don't tell you all that.
I want to get back to this topic here about stripping away the identity of Islam and making it palatable for the enemy. Right? Like, why is it that the enemy pushes Martin Luther King and not Malcolm X? Why? And they're so happy to teach you about Martin Luther King in their schools and not Malcolm X. Because they know and they understand psychology and they know and they understand liberation. The same people that teach their children, give me liberty or give me death, are teaching Black folk, peaceful protest.
They're teaching all non-white people all over the world that, but in the context of North America, they're teaching Black folks, but they're teaching that to everyone. Everybody
who's not white, peaceful protest. Anybody who is white, give me liberty or give me death.
Even white folks that are fed up with the system as it is.
Yeah,
they tell them peaceful protest. So that's the only means of change: peaceful protest.
Exactly. You understand? For the religion for Black folk, Christianity for Black folk, turn the other cheek, and slaves love your master. You understand? The religion for white folk, Jesus died for the sins of the world. When they say that, when Jesus died for the sins of the world, what they really mean when they saying that is that we're white, we can do whatever we want because Jesus died for you know what I'm saying? we do all kinds of reckless dirt internationally. Don't worry about it. Jesus died for our sins. That's what they mean. You understand? Freedom
or alternative meaning is that we had Jesus in Europe, so we're saved. Y'all don't. So y'all need to get saved.
When I was a kid,
we're gonna come save y'all.
I had a white classmate, who told me this with his own mouth as a child, telling me this because I was Catholic, as many of you know. So I believe that Jesus was a hippie, right? I believe that crap, right? I believe it. Jesus was a white dude, blonde hair, blue eyes, and my classmate told me, we're better than you because Jesus is white and Mary is white, and literally telling me this. You feel me? And what do you think it does to a child psychologically? Of course I believed it. Of course I believed I was inferior. You understand? And that's how they look. That's why they love Christianity so much. Because remember, when there's no such thing as racism until the 15th century, right? They made it a thing, and the church cooperated with them in order to make black people the permanent slaves to white people.
Hmm.
You understand? So that's all. That's what all that.
And to tie all that back to the original topic is, this is how you end up getting, the black conscious community and Afrocentrism, because it's a reaction, because it came out as a reaction. But the problem with it, even though it was a reaction against white supremacy, it was a reaction against enslavement, it was a reaction against injustice and colonialism, it still didn't completely break away, because you're using the master as your source. You're going to the master as your source of information.
Exactly. And not only that, it's you're getting hustled by people who say that they love you. If you look at these guys, Tarek Nasheed, former pimp. Okay. Whatchamacallit? Brother Polite, try to become a pimp. Okay.
Former Brooklyn Blood drug dealer.
Yeah.
Not saying that you're a bad person if you sold drugs or in a gang, you can change. But what did Polite change into?
Yeah. Dr. York was a career criminal. There's nothing wrong if you were a criminal and you change your life, right? We respect that. We respect if you were a criminal and you change your life, right? And we have a lot of respect for that. But it's a different thing if you, you morph your criminality in order to take advantage of your own people as a business model. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what these guys do, right? And none of them are they don't have any scruples, any morals, nothing like that.
Aki, let me read a quote to you. It's from this book that I have displayed up here. This book up here, We Can't Go Home Again. This is by a black history historian who he wrote this book as a critique against Afrocentrism. Not saying I agree with everything he says in his book, but I do like to consult all different types of sources to get different perspectives, to form my own perspectives, not just blind follow the black power, the Kemetic method. So in chapter 4, he says in this book, the first chapter on page 4, he says, Afrocentrism is Eurocentrism in blackface.
Mm-hmm.
This can be seen in the very categories of Afrocentrism used to define itself. Frequently use words such as classical and African, for example, have Western etymology and are not African in origin. The word classical comes from the Latin adjective classicus, which originally referred to someone belonging to the highest of the 5 classes of Roman citizens. When Kay Ashanti calls his new textbook Classical Africa, which Africa is he referring to? In using this terminology, Ashanti and the other Afrocentrists get conscripted into the very categories they claim to be contesting. Mm-hmm. And that is that is an issue that I point to, that a lot of these people, some of the people in the black empowerment conscious community in Afrocentrism, they're using white historians who were who had their own agenda based in colonialism, their own agenda based in white supremacy as sources. And that's how they come up with some of these critiques that we see against al-Islam in Africa, and trying to dissuade black people in North America from embracing al-Islam or learning about Islam, and poisoning people to think that Islam is is an Arab religion exclusively, and that it is something foreign to Africa, or that it came into Africa through this imagined Arab mass invasion of so-called sub-Saharan Africa, which I showed a quote from Sheikh Anta Diop, saying that never happened. It never happened. That's the problem. You shouldn't be blind following. It's just that's the problem with blind following.
Yeah. And not having any resources except for a meme or a Photoshop picture as proof.
Yes.
Just the idea of it's just so incredibly dumb. I'm sorry. And if that's what you're doing, then you're dumb. You're as dumb as nails. If that's what you do, your entire belief system is based upon memes and Photoshop pictures, and you send it to me as proof. Just please, don't waste my time. I don't want to even see that or hear that, to be honest.
Aki, I want to play some of the piece of this video that I want to get some reaction to from you and the audience as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me just key this up and get it shared. It's a conversation between some African American Muslim brothers about this very topic that we are doing on this show. So give me one moment, people. Alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah. Here we go. All right, let's get it started.
This is a Black Dawah Network discussion on how the Afrocentrists in the Black conscious community were duped into opposing Islam by the white power structure. Leading this discussion is your brother Hakeem Muhammad, as well as our brother Sharif Muhammad, who is a scholar in the field. The brother is taught at Georgia State University in the area of history, and he is also taught Islamic studies. So listen up.
That and like we have to acknowledge the role that white Orientalists have played in this confusion that many Afrocentrists have about Islam. I'll go as far as to say is that many Afrocentrists have been duped by the white supremacist power structure and their anti-Islam stance, because a lot of even parts of Chancellor Williams' works is that he's repeating, regurgitating white Orientalists and portraying Arabs as well as Muslims and no differently than many white Orientalists, and this idea that Islam spread by the sword, violently imposing itself upon people, that in and of itself is coming from this white Orientalist idea that Afrocentrists have, whether knowingly or unknowingly, inherited. And I think Afrocentrism in and of itself, the anti-Islam manifestations of Afrocentrism is in and of itself insufficiently Afrocentric, because many of them, they primarily focus on, ancient Kemet, and then they homogenize the theology of Kemet upon all of Africa, and then they just gloss over indigenous African civilizations, and they say, oh, these civilizations were imposed by the Arabs, or the Arabs were imposing these civilizations, taking credit away from the Africans who actually established it. So I think then
I want to pause it right there because I wanted to make a point that this idea that the Islamic sultanates and Islamic kingdoms in West Africa and in other parts of Africa were imposed on African, Black Africans, sub-Saharan Africans by Arabs or Berbers is in itself racist if you really contemplate it, because you're basically saying you're giving all the credit of these civilizations to someone other than sub-Saharan African people. So it's almost as if you had the narrative that sub-Saharan African people were basically brutes, people with bones in their noses, walking around naked. They had no language. They had no civilization. So, okay, what about these? The Kingdom of Ghana, or Senkofor, the first one of the first universities recorded in history, Timbuktu. What about this? What do you say about that? Okay, yeah, they're advanced. They have language. They have scholarship. They have order and structure. It's like a real civilization. Somebody else must have started that. Somebody else must have came in and started that. It couldn't have been the Africans themselves. That's why it's racist. And go ahead.
Well, I do have a problem with Afrocentrism. I won't lie. You know what I mean? Like Afrocentrism itself is big. The whole idea behind Afrocentrism is to be nostalgic. It's just a bunch of we did this and we did that, and then you're gonna wear some African clothes and a dashiki, and you know what I mean, and then put an ankh around your neck and these type of things, and walking around your house, and then you're gonna say you're Afrocentric, but it doesn't produce much except for perhaps a cult behind it or some sort of pseudo.
That's a very good point, because there was starting in the 60s, there was this idea that if we could only teach Black people their history, that was going to liberate us from white supremacy. And we've had decades now of people expounding on Black history and African history, and it hasn't lifted us it hasn't eliminated white supremacy, and it hasn't liberated Black people fully, because it takes more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes, not saying that learning your history isn't important, but that's not a magic bullet that's going to solve Black people's problems.
Yeah. So people in the Afrocentric community, that's what they do. They always stay stuck in some ancient African civilization somewhere, right? Most of the times it comes down to either West Africa or Egypt.
A lot of times Egypt.
Yeah, yeah. They don't get outside of this or that, right? You know what I'm saying?
And if you think about it, I think that whole Kemet stuff was the root of why we have this Hebrew Israelite stuff and why we have this Black Indian stuff now, because there's almost like a
competition or something.
A competition, but almost a shamefulness about is there something shameful about having West African origins? It's like it's not good enough.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
So it's not good enough. So let's attach ourselves to Egypt.
Egypt,
yeah. So then we attached ourselves to Egypt, even though our ancestors didn't come from the Nile Valley area. They came from West Africa, but we're attaching ourselves to a completely different region and a completely different group of people.
Exactly.
And that opens the door to, well, if we could attach ourselves to this group of people, well, let's attach ourselves to the Hebrews. Well, let's attach ourselves to the Native Americans and different Native American tribes. It almost opened the gate for all these follow-up movements.
Yeah. And that's the consequence of not actually knowing who you are, as a people, right? So you get taken advantage of these Afrocentrists that's come up with these ideas, and a lot of it can't be proven. Much of the ideas, they can't be proven, and it's just more of a type of nostalgia, connecting yourself to ancient old civilizations while doing a whole bunch of nothing at the same time, right? So that's my issue with Afrocentrism. I don't think it's useful. You know what I mean? I don't think. And if you look at the Afrocentric type movements like the Kemet, you know what I mean, or these weird movements or whatever, what do they really do? You know what I mean? What like Sa Neter and these type of people, you know what I mean?
Sa Neter does nothing. Let's get this established.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking the brother's hustle. We all got to eat.
Yeah,
Sa Neter doesn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, like they don't do anything. All they do is talk about.
And Sa Neter is very his program has a lot. He brings on a lot of anti-Muslim speakers, and they they take up a lot of time attacking Islam on his show.
And Muslims have to bear some of that responsibility as well, because between the 2000s up until this day, Black Muslims have by and large abandoned making dawah because they're afraid of getting refuted and stuff. You know what I mean? So
now they just didn't care.
Yeah. Well, the not caring came afterwards, right? Because if you build a culture that is so hostile to itself, that eventually people just won't care about it. You know what I mean? Like if you tell your people that you can't make a dawah, you're not allowed to. Why? Because you don't have knowledge. Well, how much knowledge do I have to
no scholars in the West?
No scholars in the West. You know what I mean? And you might make a mistake. So you got people walking on eggshells, more afraid to make a mistake than to call their family away from the hellfire.
But if we're not, nobody is qualified to make dawah. How did we all become Muslim?
You
know, so you got all these black Muslims in North America who became Muslim through dawah, but they're not allowed to make dawah because they might make a mistake. That doesn't even make any sense.
The only people that are allowed to make dawah are the people that twitch and twirl for Abu Khadija and them. You know what I mean? Those are the only ones. If you can bust it open wide enough for scrubs, all right?
Yeah, so you have to be on the approval list.
You have to be on the
approved speaker list.
You are qualified to make dawah. And how do you get qualified? Not by any real credentials. No. Look at Shamsi. All he does is talk about our shayukh every 3 or 4 days. Our shayukh, Abu Khadija.
Yeah, because I mean, as has been pointed out by many, that many of these people who so-called have control over the access list of who gets to talk themselves have no credentials.
They don't have credentials. Yeah,
they're Medina dropouts.
Mm-hmm. But let somebody else from that group put out a dawah video today. First thing you're gonna ask, what makes you qualified to go and make dawah? And even still, why'd you put this on? You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. And we've had that for 20 years now. And now these guys are popping up.
Mm.
These guys are popping up because we fell for the okie doke. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah. and that's what I said back in the 80s and the 90s. You know, Islam had a lot of clout in the black community, even among people who were not Muslim. People respected Muslims. People respected Muslims. Respected Islam.
People wanted Muslims in their neighborhoods.
Yes.
Right? Because they knew once the Muslims come in, things will get cleaned up. You know what I mean? The drug dealers will become Muslims and they'll stop doing what they're doing. And, you know, they knew that was going to happen. And it's a totally different ball game now.
So we had an indigenous movement going on, which was it was causing black people to convert to Islam, or it was benefiting non-Muslim black people, even if they didn't accept Islam, it was still benefiting them.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was all put on pause by foreign entities.
Yep. As it always is with the black community. And there comes a time where we have to look in the mirror and say, how many times are we going to do this? Like, how many times is it going to happen? It's not like it's not like the enemy's doing a different thing. They're just putting a different face. You know what I'm saying? Same strategy, different face, you know?
Yeah, so instead of giving dawah and cleaning up your own community, you know, the answer seemed to become, you know, everybody's going to make hijrah.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's just going to make hijrah.
Everybody got to make hijrah, which, in my opinion, is ridiculous. It's totally
ridiculous. It's not even possible. It's not possible.
It's not even.
First of all, make hijrah to where exactly?
Yeah.
Where are you going to get permanent citizen? Are you going to get permanent residence or permanent citizenship? Because going somewhere and then coming back, that ain't hijrah.
Exactly.
And
hijrah, you can't practice your religion. Everybody in the West can practice their religion, except in France, maybe. But everybody in the West can practice their religion freely.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And on top of that, no Western country is preventing Muslims from making dawah. They will send their provocateurs and their agents. Yeah, they'll do that. And they've done that. They will do that to curtail the dawah, and it's worked. Right? But we know it can't work forever. So it all comes down to what we want to do. They did it in India. They did it in Africa. They did it in the West.
Another,
You know
I
what I
tell
mean?
you another thing that gave these some of these these black conscious hustlers passed to attack Islam is that a lot of people became busy refuting among the Ummah. A lot of people became busy refuting each other.
Yeah.
And so we were so busy refuting each other,
Mm.
and we had black Muslims afraid of other black Muslims or afraid of
Yep.
some other foreign entity, that these jokers had a free lane.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what happened. I remember back in the day in the 90s, right? The Sufis couldn't come out and say that they were Sufi because the Salafis were that strong. No Sufi was coming out saying that they were Sufi, including Hamza Yusuf. Hamza Yusuf denied being Sufi, okay?
Subhanallah.
Right? Wallah al-Azim, he denied it, right? He couldn't come out and say that he was a Sufi, right? It wasn't until, Spubs and them came and wrecked the entire thing, right? Then he started coming out and saying that he was a Sufi.
See,
you know what I mean? So,
but we have to, subhanAllah, we have to learn from our mistakes and make Toba and rectify our sincerity to Allah, because everything is based in sincerity to Allah, and we have to do better. We have to regroup and do better. We have to regroup and do better. And the reason I did this, I wanted to do this topic because some of these jokers need to get some work. They need to get some work. They've been, you're gonna have Islam in your mouth too long, and a lot of Sonetta, he sets up these stupid debates where I don't know where he finds these Muslims from. They can't
off the street, of course.
They can't talk, they can't answer nothing, they get overran, and he puts them up against Polite and all of these other people, and it makes it look like you make Polite look like he's a
genius or something.
Yeah, a genius,
Yeah. Yeah, of course. It just and if you want to be played, then listen to these people. You know what I mean? Like, again, we have to take some accountability and some responsibility of the things that we consume. You understand? Food is energy for the body, right? But knowledge is food for the brain. You understand? So there, just like food, you have your good healthy food, your vegetables, your meats. You know what I mean? These are good healthy food, and then you have junk food, right?
Beneficial knowledge.
Beneficial knowledge, and then junk food knowledge. There's just junk. And if you feed your brain junk, what are you going to spew out your mouth? You know what I mean? What are you going to be thinking? You understand? So this is what's happening to us. And we as Black people, we need to take responsibility for what we consume. We need to take responsibility for what we say, what we listen to, and most of all, what we read. Because Black people, by and large, let's be real. We don't read. The only thing that we read are comments and
memes
and memes and chicks that we slide in their DMs on Facebook talking about where's your wakil or wali or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people that are influenced by aspects of this this Black conscious community. They don't actually read books. They just go on YouTube. They're just going on YouTube looking at videos.
Yeah, you can tell they don't read books. By the way they speak, they don't read. And somebody who reads books knows somebody if they read books or not. They can tell just by the way they speak, by the answers they give. But they understand this type of, because there's a level of civil discourse you can have with somebody when you're disagreeing with them. You understand? But people who don't read, they have no method of expressing themselves. Why? Because they don't read. They don't read. So their only expression is through emotion. So if you disagree with them, the only thing they can do with you is get emotional. They have to pull out ad hominem attacks,
No.
You're ignorant. You're this, you're that. You don't know what you're talking about. Are you calling me a liar? That's how they speak. Are you calling me a liar? I know who I am. I know where I'm from.
I'll tell you something I really hate. I've seen this. I saw a debate with some Hebrew Israelites and a Muslim. He wasn't a Muslim. He was Qadiani. And he went on their show, on their platform, and it's like 10 of them on the microphone, and it's one of him. That's one thing. And every 2 seconds they're laughing. They got these, they're dropping bombs, like the sound, the sound effects, like dropping bombs, and every 2 seconds, and this is how they try to overwhelm an individual.
Exactly.
Because they don't have anything. They don't have any substance. They're dusty. They little dusties. Little dusty. I think I learned something while I was in prison. And you want to get out here, and now you want to run a hustle on social media, and you want to set up these discussions and these debates that are one-sided, and they're one-sided, and you know what the outcome is going to be.
Of course, you know what I mean. So they're not trying. They're not really trying to debate. A debate is like a gentleman's argument. You know what I mean? That your opponent gets a certain amount of time. You'll get a certain amount of time. You both are bringing your proofs and your evidences, and then you just let your audience decide. What these guys are doing is they're doing hit shows. You understand? So they will cut you off. They will mute your mic. They will speak over you. You say a sentence, and they'll attack. They won't even let you finish what you're saying. They'll just attack your sentence. You can't even get your thought out, and then you're running all over the place. And at the end of it, in the comments section, you see, yeah, you smashed that dude. Yeah, because it's a you're preaching to the choir. Everybody there is already on your side anyways. You're not really trying to come to any conclusion about the truth. You're just trying to push your narrative.
But one of the sad things is you have a lot of this stuff is coming out of or concentrated in the East Coast. But you got so many brothers that are on the Sunnah or claim to be on the Sunnah on the East Coast. How do you let these jokers just run around here?
Those same brothers that you're saying, they don't take their own religion seriously. Let's just call it what it is. They don't study their own religion. They study the religion in the context of Akida wars, and that's it. Not in the context of actually fixing their community. Mm-hmm. They see all these problems happening right outside their front door. And what's the solution? What's the solution for your next door neighbor selling drugs? The next door neighbor on the other side, she's prostituting to make money. The other next door they strung out on crack or whatever. They see this right outside the door. And what's the solution for all these problems? Quran and the Sunnah and Fahm Salaf. You know what I'm saying? Just saying that will fix all these problems. They're not even trying. They're trying to argue with other Asha'ira and these type of things. You know what I mean? While all this stuff is going on outside their front door. And so Hassan Somali Messi can get shot up twice, mind you, in 1 year, right? And all they can do is make a video talking about, we condemn this. What were you doing the last 20 years when Hassan Somali, weren't you cleaning up your neighborhood with your white thobes and all you guys in your thobes and your beards? You weren't cleaning it up? Now the violence at your front step.
But the real problem is a lot of people that are pulling those triggers come from Muslim households.
From Muslim households, yeah, they know what it is. They know what it is. So we have to bear some of that responsibility because we are actually part of the problem. So, and once we recognize that, then we can start fixing ourselves. But if you insist on investing in your own ignorance and your own indoctrination, you insist on it, right? You insist on listening to charlatans because for whatever reason, your heartstrings are pulled by being indigenous and not black, or Kemet and not African, or whatever it is, right? Then how do you expect, to progress as a people?
That's another set. You got you got brothers who are claiming to be from Ahl Sunnah, and they're not just letting it go. They're posting this stuff on their social media.
They're not
about they're posting Hebrew Israelite crap on their social media. They're posting this black Hebrew Israelite Dane Calloway crap on their Facebooks.
Yes, because they believe that, and they're intellectually lazy. And that's inexcusable, especially in 2022, when there's so much information out there.
And we've seen, and in the last couple of years, it was happening quietly, but we've seen some prominent people who have left the Deen of Al-Islam.
Yeah.
To join these people.
Exactly. And mind you, I predicted that would happen if they kept doing that. And not because I'm Negrodamus, right? But you know what I mean? It's 1 + 1 = 2. You understand? So
one of these camps, what is it? I think it's ISUPK, one of the camps. And it's based in Pennsylvania. You telling me these people are based in Pennsylvania and y'all not giving them the work of Allah?
It don't make no sense to me. It don't make no sense to me. But again, because for them, they're interested in Akida wars.
But they were told to be interested in that.
They're told that
blind following.
Yes, that wasn't the original dawah. That wasn't dawah to Salafiyah in the 90s. We didn't have
Salafi ulama.
The dawah to Salafiyah was Quran and Sunnah with the understanding of the Salaf. Yeah. Right, and what we're doing, we're actually making dawah. We're calling people to Islam. All this Akida stuff, this person is off it. This person, all that happened afterwards, and then the dawah shifted from calling the people to Islam and calling people to the Sunnah to calling people away from the callers. Protect your deen. Be careful from who you take your deen from, and all this kind of stuff. You understand? And that's what people were doing. They're trying to find follow-up mistakes on people. Now, these are the fruits of your labor. Eat it. As bitter as it is, as thorny as it is, eat it.
That's the danger of blind following, because if some entity or individual set themselves up as the criteria to judge who's really on it and who's off it, well, who holds them accountable?
Yep.
Who critiques them? Who holds them accountable? Who calls them out?
Yeah, bro.
Because they're the highest. They've made themselves the highest authority, and you've accepted them as the highest authority. So you just blind follow whatever they say.
Exactly.
SubhanAllah. Okay. We've been running for a while, so I want to give people, let people go pray. We're going up on 2 hours now, but this has been a good show, a lot of good information. Alhamdulillah. I hope people got something out of it. Again, it's free to like a video. It's free to subscribe. It's free to hit the bell. It's free to share on your social media and send to people and email to people and let people know about this, this free work, because we're not getting paid to come up here and give you this information and talk about these topics. So you can pay us back by liking, sharing, subscribing. Go to the Features channel and subscribe, share, check out some of his videos also. And if you want to go over and above, you are free to go on the Patreon. I'm not going to stop you. Bring all the tithes and the offerings into the storehouse. SubhanAllah. Jazakallah khair, Aki.
Oh yeah, my pleasure, bro. My pleasure. Hayakumullah.
So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and to all the rest of the audience. Thank you guys for coming out.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hayakumullah.